Okay. Good evening again, everybody. I'm very glad to be here this evening, enjoying the last few hours in civilization before we go to our 2-week retreat tomorrow, the monks and postulates here. And I think it's probably the same for all of us here, that we feel very comfortable being out in the open, in nature, in natural environments, such as forests, mountains, or on a beach, isn't it? So it's just pleasant to be there and finally stop doing so many things and just be, you know? I mean, after all, we are human beings and not human doings, right? But it's very difficult these days to just be and not always do something. So, speaking about nature, I always felt very comfortable and very at home in nature, and always liked to be out in the open. Even when I was a newly ordained monk in Myanmar, in Burma, I always had an inclination to just be out in the forest, in the open. And at some time I even decided not to use my kuti, the small hut that I was given, and I would just camp outside under a tree, under my mosquito net. And I think many of you probably know, you've seen those umbrellas. It's like an umbrella with a mosquito net on top. Like in the Thai forest tradition, that's a standard equipment for a monk, and then you can stay out in the open or have some protection from mosquitoes, or maybe even scorpions. So when you stay out there, it sounds maybe very dangerous or adventurous, but it's actually not so difficult. Especially these days, you know. In the old days, they used to have dangerous animals, tigers and bears. Depends on the region. Where I stayed in Myanmar, in Paok, actually none of these really extremely dangerous animals were there. So it's quite safe. Yet to get to enjoy and to live out in nature, in harmony with your surroundings. So it always felt very nice. It's not to say that there's no dangerous animals around at all, but what sometimes, especially evening times, what often would come would be a group of wild pigs, wild boars. And they're actually not so dangerous normally, especially if you don't corner them or something. And often you would also see them even during daytime. They would come in groups, like the parents, the elders with the children, and maybe grandchildren, I don't know. So often groups of 5, 7, 8, even 10 wild pigs. And some of them can be quite sizable, you know. Can be 1.5 meters, 2 meters long. And so big body also. But some of them are really cute actually. But in nighttime also they would come, especially when there's a full moon period. And they would come at nighttime. And that was sometimes a bit scary. You can imagine when you stay out there, you have no protection other than a mosquito net. So you're just staying there on the ground, lying down sometimes at night, and then a group would come of wild pigs. And I know, I've heard reports that they can attack human beings also. So it's good to be careful. But normally they wouldn't do anything. And so normally when I would already hear them, even at night you can hear them come in the distance because the leaves are dry and you can hear a group of wild boars coming. So I would just protect myself by chanting. I do some parita chants, especially the snake protection chanting, the kanta parita, that the Buddha encouraged for monks living in the forest, the Buddha says. Then they should regularly protect themselves by spreading loving kindness to especially snakes, but then also to scorpions, spiders, lizards, rats, whatever dangerous animals could be around. So you spread your loving kindness in all directions. It's like almost like a shield, your metta shield, you can say, through which they cannot enter really. If you have strong, powerful, loving kindness, people are not inclined to hurt you, to harm you, or even animals can feel that sometimes. So in this way, the Buddha recommended, if you go in the forest and in dangerous areas, you protect yourself by spreading loving kindness in all directions. So whenever the wild pigs would be coming, I would start the chanting of loving kindness, parita. I think it's two factors that helped to chase them away. One is, of course, the metta, that they wouldn't attack. But then also, I think, the sound of just them hearing that there's a human being reciting something, then also they will already go their own way. They wouldn't come close. It's more if they don't see you, if they don't hear you, and then they come close, and then they might get frightened. But if they know from the distance already, there's a person, they already go their own way. In fact, I think most animals, if not all animals, have better reason to be afraid of humans than we of them, isn't it? But it so happened that actually one time, I do recall, I was also staying out there. I was getting pretty late, I was already sleeping, maybe 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. And normally I hear the wild pigs coming close, and then I can start with my chanting. But at that time, I didn't hear them coming. I was just resting there. And the surrounding areas around my mosquito net, I swept it usually. So there are no leaves, maybe 2 or 3 meters all around in all directions. And out there in the forest, of course, it's full of leaves. So I would hear the wild pigs coming. But at that time, I didn't hear them coming. And then I heard some, but then sometimes you hear them coming, and then tuck, tuck, tuck. And then I don't hear the steps anymore. So at that time I knew, actually, that one is really close now. And I was just flat on the ground. That was pretty scary. And I was thinking, well, how close is he going to come? Normally I would start chanting, but at that time I also didn't want to start chanting because that might frighten him even more. So I just kept silent and come closer and closer and closer. And came so close. Actually, I didn't see anything. I had my eyes closed. It was pitch dark anyway, and didn't see anything. But it came so close that I could hear the wild boar breathe in and breathe out. So it means it was standing just next to me, maybe half a meter, 20 centimeters, I don't know. I was just terrifying. So I could hear him breathe in, breathe out. I could have done anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing, with the wild boar's breath. As the sutta says, breathing in long, he knows. He breathes in long, breathing in short, he knows, breathing in short. Yeah, I could know all of that, Also interesting, at that moment, mindfulness is very strong. Yeah, because you're really alert and you don't know what's going to happen. So he was standing just next to me, I think. And there's also maybe a form of body contemplation. In the sutta it says you should practice body contemplation internally and externally. And I always was wondering, how do you practice mindfulness of breathing externally? That's how you do it. When the wild boar is coming and you can hear him breathe in and out, then you can practice externally. So anyway, nothing much happened. Otherwise I wouldn't be here sitting telling the story. So after a short moment he came closer, stood there, and then he just walked past and took off, together with the whole family. But that was a really scary moment, You stay out there and you don't know what is he going to do. I didn't actually think that he might attack. I was more concerned that he would just run over me, not seeing me lying on the ground. So, well, that can happen, Stay in the open, living outside. Now, by the way, have you heard about these monks somewhere in West Malaysia? They're all going completely wild. Have you heard about that? Yeah, forest monks going wild.
Yes.
You know who they are?
Yeah.
These monks here. So, as many of you probably know, we are just on our tour. We are going to Impact Canyon Conservation Area tomorrow morning, and we'll stay there in that forest reserve for the next 2 weeks and practice there. going back to the roots, so to speak, quite literally. And in this way, having a time out in nature. And Father Lawrence was helping to organize this whole event. So that's why we came actually over for this occasion now, being here today, the last day, and tomorrow morning we're taking off. And then for 2 weeks, being out there at Impact Canyon. Has any one of you been there actually? Have you ever visited that place? Oh, nobody, huh? Oh, one. Okay. So I think it's very secluded. You can't even go in alone. You normally need a ranger, somebody to bring you there. And if you want to stay there for a longer time, you have to bring your own food. So there's no 7-Eleven or anything there. So the title of the talk today, I thought also would be very befitting to call it Back to the Roots. Okay? And back to the roots can have 2 meanings. One means back to one's origins. To one's origins. So if you consider the Sangha also, the community of monks, they lived originally very simply. At the Buddha's time, the very early stages of the Buddha's teaching career, the monks were just living in forests. And monasteries were not yet established. And they lived a very meditative lifestyle out in nature. And there are many different types of outdoor resting spots, you can say. For example, a monk's basic support for lodgings, the Buddha says, are the root of trees, the foot of a tree. This is one's basic support. If you become a monk, this is what you are entitled to. To sleep at the foot of a tree. But if it so happens that somebody offers you a lodging or a shelter, then that's also allowable. But basic support for monks is the foot of a tree. Okay, but nowadays I think we're all lucky enough that we don't have to stay at the foot of a tree, and we also have kutis, smaller huts, or larger huts, or whole monasteries where monks live together. So the foot of a tree, according to the commentaries, that also means not just a tree directly at the root of a tree, but also the area where at the midday sun, where the shade would fall, the shadow, is still considered one's dwelling place, according to the commentary. The sub-commentary expands on this topic a little bit by mentioning also other outdoor resting spots for meditation, many of which are also mentioned in the suttas, but also especially here in the Mahavagga, in the Vinaya book of the Mahavagga. So outdoor resting spots, it also mentions like a mountain or a boulder or a mountain cleft or a forest grove or wilderness or under the open sky. You can make a tent out of your ropes to protect yourself a little bit from the heat, or a haystack, a cave. Caves are actually very popular because it's interesting. Caves, in the hot season, it's cool inside, so it keeps the heat out. But when it's cool outside, the warmth is a bit conserved, so it's comparably warm inside the cave. So caves traditionally were always a very popular resting space for monks, and even nowadays in Sri Lanka, Thailand, Buddhist countries, you find many monks staying in caves. Also what is mentioned in bamboo thickets, or an open pavilion, or a tent. So this is one meaning of going back to one's roots, to the origins, to the early lifestyle of the Buddhist community, living very simply in forests and these simple accommodations. But back to the roots of trees is also mentioned quite literally in the Anapanasati Sutta, isn't it? Majjhima Nikaya 180, with the preliminary steps before one starts to practice mindfulness of breathing. There it is mentioned, here a bhikkhu, come to the forest or to the root of a tree or to an empty hut, sits down, having folded his legs crosswise and set his body erect, and establishes mindfulness in front of him. Ever mindful, he breathes in, mindful, he breathes out. It's the preliminary step of mindfulness of breathing. So there it's already directly mentioned, come to the forest or to a root of a tree. Does this mean this is the only place you can practice anapanasati? No, probably not. But it means, a place that is secluded, secluded enough so that nobody comes in to disturb you all the time. So this can be also even in an apartment. If you have a room where you have a place for yourself, you want to meditate a little bit, that can also be your bodily seclusion. It's not a forest exactly, but it gives enough viveka, enough seclusion for us to focus on what we want to focus on. Coming back to this slogan, to this title, Forest Monks Going Wild. So this was the title we had for this project, for our retreat that we are starting tomorrow. And anyone interested? Of those who have not been to Impact Canyon, would you like to see a little bit how it looks there? The area there? Yes? Yeah. Then in this case, we'll try to maybe project a short clip. Let me see. You can get a picture over there. Okay, so who would like to come along? It's fantastic nature and wildlife and pristine forests, but there's also dangers out there. Elephants, all kind of creatures, snakes, scorpions, spiders, lizards, rats. But I think we're in good hands there because we have rangers with us, and they would hopefully warn us of the most dangerous animals and help us if they come along. So this would be the good thing about it. It really fosters simplicity, you know. So living out there in the forests, natural beauty, but you also get a healthy dose of discomfort, you know, while devoting yourself to meditation and secluded places, far aloof from society, but also the forest itself provides plenty of challenges. Challenges and benefits. So what are the benefits? I was wondering, what are the benefits of living in seclusion, of dedicating oneself for a certain period of time to a little bit of seclusion? So one is, well, you will not hoard up a lot of possessions, right? Because if you live somewhere in the forest, especially for the monks, well, how many things can you take along? Well, as much as you can carry at most. But that's just so much. So you wouldn't take a lot of books with you, or a lot of unnecessary items that you don't really need on a daily basis. So it helps you to focus on what is really essential, and not, I think all of us, we have the situation that we often have many more things that we really need. Especially nowadays, it's so easy to have access to resources from all over the world. And I always have this very nice image in my mind of one monk I met in Myanmar long ago. He was a teacher at the monastery where I stayed, where I ordained. And at one time, I made an appointment with him. And I was quite new there, and I made an appointment with him to meet him at his kuti, he said. You should come over to his kuti, because I wanted to ask him some questions about the Dhamma. So he said, okay, come over, I think 4 or 5 p.m., I forgot. Come over to my kuti. But he said, it could be that he's not there. He might come a few minutes late. So I said, okay, never mind. So I went over the next day, 5 p.m., and went there, and really he was not there yet. And he also said, you can just go in, you know, don't have to wait outside. Just go inside, wait there. So I went in, I looked around, thought, that's strange. I went in the wrong kuti, into the wrong hut. Nobody living here. So I looked around, everything empty. I was already on my way out again, and he just came. He just came my way. Are you living here? Yes, he's living here. You know, the whole kuti, empty. Nothing there. It didn't look like anybody could be possibly living here. No books. There was a bookshelf, but no books. Then the bed, there was a mattress, but also no pillow, and no blanket on top. I thought, it looks like an empty hut. Just in the bathroom, I saw there was one towel, but not even a toothbrush. I thought, nobody's living here. So I just wanted to go, and he came back. And he said, yeah, he's living here. And I found out he's living at this kuti since 3 years. He's living there since 3 years and has no property. Well, I was very impressed. You can imagine, as a young monk, and I've never seen something like that. And then I went back to my kuti. My goodness, that kuti was full with stuff and clutter, and no 3 centimeter, well, not that bad, but actually one problem was also that these kutis, these huts, they are communal, and so one time one monk lives there, and then when he moves out, another monk will move in there. But sometimes when people move out, they leave things behind. So there's a tendency that more and more clutter accumulates at these communal huts, because people don't take away their things, everybody leaves something behind, and then over time it's a lot of stuff. So when I came back to my kuti, I looked around and thought, my goodness. But then I thought, man, it would be so nice also to reduce. Of course, those things that didn't belong to me was easy to get rid of. But those things that were my own belongings, well, it's more of a tendency, you know, to hold on and to attach. Do I really need this or not? But I was so impressed by that monk, with the simple lifestyle that he lived, and the little of items that he had to look after. I thought, maybe I can also do that somehow. And I thought, okay, every day I will take one thing that I think I won't need anymore, or something that I have not used for a long time. If I have not used something for a month or 3 months, probably I will also not use it the next few days. So I thought, maybe I just go like that. So my kuti. And they started this practice. That every day I would identify one thing that I can let go of. And I did it for a while. And and over time, you can notice actually there's many things that you rarely use. Yeah. We possess so many things that at one time we thought, oh, I need this, I need that. But actually you don't really need it anymore. So how about you? How many things do you have in your kuti or in your house, in your apartment? 10? 20? Countless. Yeah, difficult to count, no? Just imagine you would have to put a number on each item. It would be probably more than 2 digits, 3 digits, maybe 4 digits, I don't know. But do you really need all of those things still? Or is there anything that you think you could actually let go of? Because often things, also you have to look after them, everything we have, well, you have to clean it from time to time, maintain it, and more clutter accumulates, and you go inside a house and see, my goodness, it's full. Actually, it looks much nicer if there's room, space. You can breathe suddenly. And also aesthetically, it can look quite nice if somewhere, not cluttered, but then somewhere something on the shelf. That thing can look quite presentable. But if there are 20 other things next to it, you don't notice anything basically. So if you can identify something in your own apartment, maybe when you go back into your house afterwards, maybe you can think, is there anything that you could let go? Or you could try something similar, maybe every day one thing. Try, every day one thing. Do that for 2 months. For 2 months, one item a day. I think you will see a difference after 2 months. And don't worry, you will still have something to wear. If you don't have anything to wear, you can still have robes like us, like we monks have. Very simple. I found it very rewarding actually, this practice of letting go of items. Because, it's like a small burden being taken off, something that you hold on to, that you don't really need anymore. And when you look around, empty room. How nice. You don't have to make your house completely empty, but often it's good to declutter stuff, no? Declutter our mind, declutter our body, lodgings. So this is one of the benefits of living in the forest, that you don't amass a lot of items, of course. Secondly, you also have a lot of time for meditation. If this is something that interests you, like for us monks, we like to spend time in meditation. So there's no distractions, there's no other activities, not many chores. If you live in a monastery, many buildings, you have to clean them sometimes, you have to sweep, clean the surfaces. But if you live in the forest, what are you going to clean? The leaves? You can sweep the leaves every now and then, but then that's it almost. So you have a lot of time for what is essential, what you regard as essential, whatever it is. The same also to reduce distractions. I think distractions is such an obstacle to whatever we want to do, to what we really want to do. Often we are just distracted with things that, we like to do, but it's not really what we aim for. Distractions are usually television, the phone, internet. How many minutes a day do you spend on your phone? Depends maybe on your age group, but I'm sure everybody is using a phone almost nowadays, no? Checking messages, Facebook, WhatsApp. How long? Less than an hour? Maybe more, no? So is this really something how you want to spend the time? To focus on what we really want to do. And there's one sutta in Anguttara Nikaya, Anguttara 10.70, where the Buddha explains, there are bhikkhus, 10 grounds for praise. What 10? So 10 reasons for praise. Here a bhikkhu is himself of few desires and speaks to the bhikkhus on fewness of desires. It's like a monk who has not many wishes, is easily contented, and also speaks in praise of that. And also he is contented and speaks about that. And also he's inclined towards solitude and towards not being bound up with others. So these are all qualities that you can develop and cultivate, especially seclusion in a forest. Also arousing of energy, accomplishment in virtue, concentration, wisdom, liberation, and knowledge and vision of liberation. So this is a very conducive environment to develop the mind and take a few days off and develop those qualities of contentment, solitude, fewness of wishes. Of course, that shouldn't ideally be limited to just a short periods of time, but it's easier to do it in certain environments than others. But why would somebody do something like that in the first place? Or why are we practicing the Dhamma? Well, probably we want to overcome suffering, isn't it? Or to put it in a positive way, to achieve happiness, well-being. But happiness, where is this happiness? Where in time and space can we find happiness? Well, Albert Einstein says everything should be somewhere in time and space. So where is happiness in time and space? Happiness in time. So which time do we have? There's the past, there's the future, there's the present. So where can we find happiness the best? In the past? Dwelling about what we've done in the past. Will that make us entirely happy? No. In the future? Always making plans for the future? But always trying to get something that we don't have right now? It's also not where happiness lies. So real happiness can exist and should exist only in the present moment. And once mindfulness is there, when you're in the present moment, it's interesting, that itself feels pleasant. Just awareness, pure awareness. You can look at something that is maybe very boring. You can look at just these flowers here, or even on the floor. But if you look at it closely, with sharpness, with alertness, that can look like the most interesting thing in the world. And the mind can feel happy. Why? Not because this thing is really objectively beautiful, but it is because the mind does not constantly go out in the past or the future, because it's present in the here and now, and that is what feels pleasant. So, when you look for happiness in time and space, it's the present moment in time. But then how about space? Where is happiness found in space? And I'm not thinking here about outer space, about different planets. But in space, we can look at it internally or externally. And I think most people probably are more looking for external solutions and for external means to provide happiness. So, new car, a house, 2 houses, 2 cars, holiday, whatever it is external, or even people, environment, is still all external. So if we think that will give us happiness, there's just one problem with that, which is that all these things tend to change, isn't it? And even if we achieve those things that we wanted to have, also we get very used to them. So even if you have attained and gotten and obtained the item that you want, that you were wishing for so long, eventually you just get used to it. In the beginning, a new car is very fancy, very nice. But then after a few weeks, it's just like any other car. You don't see it even anymore. So we adapt. It's called hedonic adaptation. So that's why also things externally cannot provide lasting happiness. So true happiness has to come from inside, from contentment, from letting go. Normally, if you envision, so maybe this is what you have, the level of what you have, and this is what you want. And there's a gap in between the two. And normally we try to close this gap by increasing what we have. But what happens is, well, yeah, you can close it a little bit, but then your wants, your wishes will rise and rise in tandem. So you have more, but then your desires and wishes also get more. And then you have more, you have to earn more, but then eventually your wishes also will rise. But that gap is never closed by increasing what you have. It's very difficult to close that gap in this way. But there's a much easier way to do it also. You have the same gap, but rather than always trying to increase this one, I can try also to reduce that one. Yeah? Decreasing my wishes, my desires, my greed, that would also close the gap or reduce the gap. In this way, the gap between what I have and what I want is very small. And this is a much more sustainable way of achieving long-term contentment, happiness, and well-being. Rather than always chasing after something, sometimes we can let go of certain things. And that's actually the happiness that comes from inside. The happiness of letting go, of contentment, gratitude. So happiness in time and space, now we know. Where in time is it found? In the present. Where in space? Internally. Okay. We can also discuss a little bit the benefits of a lifestyle of contentment and simplicity. Well, if you don't have many things to, a lot of property, then also you don't have much to clean and maintain and look after. You know, if you have a house, you put many things inside, you don't have to wipe all these items down every other day. Or with cars, also need a lot of maintenance, don't they? Computers, oh, don't ask me about computers. Always something not working. So all these things need time, maintenance, and can be potential distractions. That's not what we really want to do. I think most of us, we are not interested in constantly fixing cars or fixing computers because something again is not working. But these things take a lot of time. Another benefit is also we can reduce costs for our daily living, because if I have less desires, less wishes, then also I can live quite easily with a relatively small income and thereby gain something else. Time. Time to do whatever you want to do. Okay? But this depends on your own values, whatever you want to spend your time with. But if you have more time because you don't have to run after sense pleasures, then you can use that time for maybe learning a music instrument, learning a new language, whatever you like to spend your time, or with family. So often we spend a lot of time with things that are not really fulfilling, that we don't really want. But these things can make us so busy that for those few things that we really want, there's no more focus, there's no more time left almost. So sometimes I ask myself, how much do I really need to be happy? And often the answer is actually not very much. You know? Yeah, you need shelter, food, friends, in your case family probably. But then, these are really the most important factors. And sure, we also need money to survive and live a certain degree of comfort. But then everything more than that, you don't really need. And it can be more of a distraction. So when I ask myself the question, would I want to be happy with less? Or would it be possible to be happy, or maybe even more happy, with less? And if that is possible, would I want that? Would you want to be happy with less things? Probably yes, no? If that is possible, that would be great. If you don't need so many things, then you're not so dependent. So the more things I need to have for what I think will make me happy, then I become like a slave to my environment, to the items, or even to people. If you think I need this person to be always around me, because that will make me happy, well, you make yourself also very dependent on that person. It can be a spouse, or a child, or your grandchildren. You know? So even these things, are they really making you entirely happy? Probably not. But it doesn't mean we have to push things away. We just have to reduce our attachments, our cravings, so we can still be with items, still be with people, but our relationship to them has to transform. So rather than clinging and attaching and conserving, we let things flow. So we spend time together, sometimes not. So in this way, it's much more a mature relationship with one's environment, without attachment. So it's actually attachment that creates the suffering, not the environment. So we don't want to be slaves to items, to objects, to our phones, well, not even to people. So a lifestyle of contentment and simplicity has many benefits, as we have seen already. But how to do it? How to bring simplicity into our daily life? Well, one factor, especially for the younger generation, could be, well, to limit our online time a little bit. You know? So if you're spending 4 hours a day checking websites and on Facebook, well, that would be an easy way to win some time, and to generate some simplicity. Also, like I earlier said, removing some items that we don't need. That can also be very rewarding in an interesting way. Also to meditate on a regular basis. That gives you an inner space, inner happiness. And that also helps to declutter the mind. And many of those things we can do in forests. And that's why we monks and postulants, we're going to the forest in a few weeks, tomorrow, and stay for a few weeks. But living in the forest also comes with hardships. It's not all like it looked on the video. Yeah, it looks romantic, you see strange animals and elephants and wonderful flowers and orchids. But living in the forest also comes with a fair deal of difficulties, There are dangerous animals out there. Snakes, scorpions, elephants, leech. Do you like leech? It's interesting. It's a species that nobody likes. Or spiders. I was always scared of spiders. I didn't know much about spiders. I didn't know which are dangerous, which are not dangerous, and how and where do they live. How and where do spiders live? Well, just check it out on the website. Quite literally on the web. Find it on the web. If you type spiders in the web, you know where it lives. Or you can go to the internet, check it out there. Yeah, spiders, bears. Some places have bears. Can animals also have a difficult day, a hard day? I don't know. What does a bear do when he has a bad day, a day full of dukkha? What does a grizzly do when he's having a bad day, when they have suffering? Maybe they just bear it. What are they doing? I don't know. But forbearance or forbearance is probably a good way to deal with suffering, And the Buddha often spoke about khanti, patient endurance, forbearance. In fact, there's a sutta in Dhammapada 184, where it says one line, khanti paramang tapo didika. Patient endurance is the highest austerity. Patient endurance is the highest austerity. So I think we have already witnessed in our own lives how difficult it sometimes can be when we are associating with unpleasant situations. Climate, the weather, sometimes too hot, sometimes too cold. Rain, sunshine, or moisture. These can all be very difficult things, not easy to endure. So the Buddha often recommends these are things we should be patient and not be too easily upset about. Nowadays we live very comfortable lives. No? The temperature gets a bit too high, we can turn on the aircon. Gets a bit too low, Some places have heaters. So we can almost always have it just right. And still it feels uncomfortable. Sun, rain, and so on. But that's all part of life, part of samsara. You can't escape from that. So what we really need, we need to build this kanti, this patient endurance, this muscle of patient endurance. And that's not natural for everyone. Actually, I think almost for no one. But it's a training that you can undertake to endure difficulties more easily. And once that muscle is established, it can be applied to all kinds of situations and people even. Yeah? And you can train that in any situation, like when you go to the forest, like we are doing, you expose your body to a lot of hardship, to the weather, the climate, the dangers, mosquitoes. They can feel unpleasant. But when you endure those things, you learn how to cope with difficulties. Because in life also, you cannot always get things the way you want. Right? And the better you will learn to endure with difficulties and to be with them without getting angry. And then the easier it becomes. And wherever you go, you can live quite easily. So this quality of kanti is very important. So where in your daily life, I'm asking you now, in your daily life, where do you have situations where you think patience is needed, patient endurance? Any situations that come to mind? Wife? Yeah, when you're married, husband and wife, yeah, need a lot of patience for each other. Yeah. In addition to that, what else? Traffic. Traffic is also something where people can get quite excited about. Traffic jam. Standing there, not getting anywhere. Spending a lot of time there. Patience is necessary there. What else? Well, children probably also. Babies. Need a lot of patience. What else? Well, sickness. You get sick. It's not immediate that you get healthy afterwards. It can take long periods of time. It can be real suffering. So it's also, the body doesn't follow our command. You cannot just make a wish. May my body be healthy. Or may my body be beautiful. Yeah. So therefore, the body is also not really ourself. Because it doesn't follow our command. It doesn't follow our guidelines. If something really belongs to you, well, you can do with it whatever you want. Like if this is my cup, you can do with it as a wish. But with the body, do you have that command over your body? May my body be healthy all the time? May my body look very attractive? No. Or may you always be young? No. So clearly the body is not under our control. Therefore, we cannot truly call ourself, or me, or mine. So, sickness is part of life, so it's something we have to endure. Or when we are in the workplace, sometimes we also have to endure our co-workers, or the boss who is saying or doing things that we don't find agreeable. So there's a lot of situations in life where we have to be patient. And we cannot always change the environment. That's why I really like Lumpur Sumedho's rendering of kanti. How he translates or paraphrases kanti. It's not just endurance. He translates it as peaceful coexistence with the unpleasant. You see, and the word peaceful is there. Peaceful coexistence with the unpleasant. So meaning to say, it's not like grudgingly or with anger or aversion. Yes, I can endure that. But grinding your teeth. Yeah? But it's making peace with things that we cannot change. And peaceful coexistence with that. Letting the mind come to rest. Okay, that's how it is. Something we cannot change anyway. Or even if you can change something, sometimes it's not the right time. So then also it can be at peace. Not the right time now. And it's such an important quality. So not this grudging forbearance or just enduring. If somebody says something unpleasant, may you be well and happy. May you be well and happy and free from suffering. So it should come from real metta, loving kindness, the good wish for the well-being of others. So to sum up a little bit, we've discussed about going back to the roots and the importance of sometimes retreating to lonely places or seclusion, which can help the mind to focus and focus instead on what is essential. Also, living in a forest helps to not just focus, but also to be in harmony with one's surroundings, with environment, with nature. That is in itself a valuable thing, I think. We spoke about different benefits of seclusion, but also about the hardships of living in the forest from time to time, and the importance of patient endurance. So how to bring simplicity to our daily life? What did we discuss? Well, maybe by decluttering a little bit our things, our items, or spending less time online, or on YouTube, on Facebook. So these are all ways how we can bring, even if you don't go to the forest, even if you don't go to the jungle, you can still achieve some of the same benefits by striving and aspiring towards contentment, simplicity, gratitude, and living a simple, humble life. So I would like to share that and offer that for your reflection now, and then would like also to open up for questions, comments, either on the talk itself or in general. So, sadhu, sadhu. Sadhu, sadhu.
Bhante have just shared various simplicities in our daily life. It's very meaningful. In order to free ourselves, I think just to be simple is one of the solutions. Any question from the audience?
Questions, comments about the talk itself, or can also be in general, doesn't have to be directly related to the talk. Yes.
You'll kickstart the question also. I understand that if we practice in seclusions in the forest can be very effective. What if we don't have a chance, we have to practice at our home in the city? Can it be, is there any way to be as effective as in seclusion as well? Or is it that if Bhante recommends any way for us lay people to practice in the city can be as effective as forest, or there's just no way, we just have to go to the forest and leave everything behind and practice that way?
Actually, the Buddha recommends to practice in all postures, for example. Standing, sitting, walking, or lying down. Not just in all postures, also in all environments. Why? Well, the main practice that we are trying to do is we practice the four foundations of mindfulness. And they are comprised out of the body, feelings, mind, and mind objects, dhammas. So, when you are at home, is your body with you? Yes, it is, no? Do you breathe in and out? I hope so. So, if you're breathing in and out, then you can practice mindfulness directed towards the body, mindfulness of breathing, for example. You don't have to be in a forest to breathe and to pay attention to the breathing process, for example. So yes, we can and even should practice, not only in the short periods where we go to some secluded place and then practice there intensively, but we can and should practice also in our daily lives, in whatever environment we find ourselves. I think this is actually very important. And in this way, bring your formal practice into your daily activities. You can be aware of seeing, of hearing. There's always some sounds going on. Like now, even if I'm not talking all the time. You can hear the humming of the aircon in the background. Sometimes birds. So you can be aware of hearing. it's also a field of awareness, of mindfulness. And in fact, forests, yes, they are good environments for practice because ideally you're not disturbed, especially by other people. But forests are not silent. And forests can be quite noisy, you know. And all kinds of forest animals, and leaves, and the wind. It could be, you know, how they call it? I think crickets. Forests usually have a lot of crickets. And crickets are so noisy. It's like an airplane jet. Yeah, I would definitely say yes. You can practice and should practice also in daily life, in all environments. Yet, it is also good from time to time to have a period that you put aside where you dedicate yourself particularly only to meditation, and also where you seek out a little bit more seclusion than you would have at home. But it doesn't have to be a forest. It can also be a retreat or a retreat center somewhere where you spend a week or 2 weeks, undergo a retreat. It can even be in the middle of a city, you know. That's why I said earlier, roots of trees. Yes, this is one way where you find seclusion. But any room, any place that you can establish in a way so that it's sufficiently quiet and sufficiently undisturbed by other people, then that gives you enough seclusion for your practice. So it doesn't have to be anywhere else. You can do it at home, any environment. So both is important, the daily life practice, but also to having these shorter periods of intensive practice. They are both very valuable on your path. You cannot always be in retreat. Even the forests, even the monks are not all the time living in retreat mode. So we also have to do things, have to look after our places, share the Dhamma sometimes. So it's also a more involved lifestyle. So we can go back and forth between these different modes of practice. Did that answer your question?
Yes, very much. Thank you, Bhante.
Bhante, maybe I'd like to ask this question. What about the fear of letting go, one by one?
Can you be a bit more specific? Letting go of what?
Like the actual practice is we need to let go, especially our possessions, right? If I have let go and there's nothing to let go, the fear that comes back that I have nothing now, I'll die of hunger.
Oh, I see. So it's actually not the fear of letting go, but the fear of having let go too much. Right? That's what you're really asking for. There are two different things, and actually both can be fear. Now let's start with the first one, because that one is also interesting. What to do about the fear of letting go. Because sometimes you hear in all these Dhamma talks from monks, they tell you have to let go and get rid of all your items. But you also have to be ready to let go. Don't get rid of things that you really need. Where you really objectively think, okay, is this something that I cannot let go? Then don't do it. You have to feel ready. So you have to be, you challenge yourself just to a degree that feels comfortable, or that feels doable. But you don't let go of everything. You don't quit your job just because Ariyadhammika said in the Dhamma talk, you have to let go of everything. So you have to use your own wisdom and discretion to understand, okay, this is something it's not so important, this is just holding me back, it don't give me much benefit, you can let go. But then there are other things you should not let go of. Letting go is more related to a mental attitude. It's not that you have to let go of things or people. It's your attachment towards them. That's what you let go. And you can still be with the same item. You don't have to get rid of anything, as long as you get rid of your attachment towards it. So that's what you should really look out for. So sometimes when you let go of your attachments, then it just follows naturally that you also don't need those things anymore. Then it's easy to let go also physically of things. But the letting go of the desire, the attachment should come first. So otherwise you push yourself into a direction that you don't feel ready, and that's then also not so beneficial, I think. And then that can happen, what you said earlier, that you have fear. Now you have let go of so much, you have gotten rid of all your clutter at home, and now your home is empty, and now you want to do something, and don't find your tools anymore, and you want to cook something, no more pots here. Maybe you've given them all to the monastery. You have to go to the monks. Can I borrow please my frying pan? So, if you let go more than the monks, so then maybe also not so bad, you get to Nibbana quicker than the monks. So that should usually not happen, that you have gotten rid of things that you actually still need importantly or urgently. But actually, if you still need them or need to get it back, well, maybe you still have means to get it back. Yes?
Yeah, this question is actually attention to the pro-student. I would like to know, every one of you, what is your motivation to choose this path? What motivates you?
Anyone?
I think that honestly looking at life and seeing what makes you happy and what does not make you happy. And then for me, I started to see more and more clearly what makes me happy. And when I got rid of a lot of stuff, it made me very happy. So I thought, what is the way to get rid of the most stuff? And I Googled this, and then a monk showed up. But of course, there's a serious side of it as well. That I noticed what makes me happy in life and what not, and I try always to keep looking at this honestly, and this is why now I'm in this seat at this moment.
Are you sure monk's life is the way to most happiness?
We're gonna try.
Okay.
After the stories of the forest, I'm not sure now. It might lead to early death, but we see.
I was quite taken by the teaching of the Buddha as it's handed down in the sutta. And he gives a lot of similes that are meant to inspire samvega, and that's a sort of urgency towards practicing and finding a way to overcome birth, rebirth, and so it's pretty much my motivation there.
I don't know if this is going to be okay, but to me came very little by little in my life. I used to be a manager, like having a very business-oriented life. Was working in China before, and very successful. And little by little, I began to get rid of things.
Why?
Because basically, I went to certain extremes, and I realized that it was not bringing me anywhere. Realized that even having things would not make me happy was always not enough, and I always wanted more. And I experienced some suffering, and I started to do meditation, and I started to do more and more meditation, and that really gave me space, and I started developing, like doing more and more meditation made my mind changing, and then things begin to happen in my life that was according to. I started really aligning my thinking with my doing, being more integrated, and afterwards I started living without money. I started living the life of celibacy, and so afterwards, like my life is the life of a monk. So I decided, so if I'm living the life of a monk, why not being a monk? So it's really a process for me. It was really like a little by little process. It's not like just after waking up one morning and just decide, okay, I want to be a monk. No, it was not like this.
Sorry, I'm not very good with that expressing myself, but for me, I would say it's needing a good spiritual friends, because I try keeping the precept in just normal life, but it's difficult when the people around you it's not supportive of what you're doing. So I figured I need a spiritual friend to help me in my path. That's why I decided.
Yeah, one more questions. Can you introduce yourself, where you're from, and how you come to know Buddhism and your interest in Buddhism?
For me, my name is Tuan. I'm from born in Vietnam, raised in the US, and my family is Buddhist.
I'm Tony, and I'm from France. When I was 16 or something like this, I read a book about Buddhism from my auntie, and I started very little practicing meditation. But the first
Sorry to interrupt. Your auntie is an author of Buddhist books? You said you read a book for Buddhism from your auntie. Wow, didn't know that.
No, my auntie had a book, and I was reading it during vacation, and I found it quite interesting. But for me, the real breakdown, let's say, the real time where I started stepping further was when I did a retreat, a Goenka retreat in 2010 when I left my job when I was in China, and I did this 10-day retreat, and it was like a life-changing experience. I stopped smoking and drinking, and it was really life-changing experience.
My name is Daniel. I'm from America, and I started with yoga and Zen, and I was really into Taoing and all types of different spiritual books and teachings for years and years. But I was into Zen Buddhism. It's pretty popular in America, and also Tibetan Buddhism, quite popular. So I sort of dabbled in all these things. But when I found the sutta and I found the real teaching of the Buddha, it just struck me very, very deeply. And it was also a time in my life when a lot of things were changing. I just felt the call to renounce and to take up a really dedicated life of meditation and spiritual practice.
So my name is Bhante. I'm from the Netherlands. I think for me the way I met the teachings of the Buddha was, I think, a little bit likewise to what you've heard before. So I was also working in a job. This was going quite well. I was traveling a lot. I had a lot of opportunities, but it didn't feel quite right. It was never really enough, and I always had this feeling. But when I was talking to people about it, it never really worked out. And so for me, there was a lot of. I felt much lighter the first time I heard the teachings of the Buddha, and I was very surprised that 2,600 years ago he was explaining what I was experiencing, and I was like, somebody gets it, I'm not crazy. And so there was a lot of relief. This was the word that I was looking for, because being crazy, it didn't sound like a very good way to be. But so when I met the teachings and also teachers that showed me how to meditate, and it was very good experience, especially because I had always learned that I had to do all these things to be happy. I have to have a good job, do good there, get good grades in school, have a nice girlfriend, travel a lot, do all these things, and then I was just sitting on a pillow doing meditation. I was not doing anything, and I never had felt so full and so okay and so like, I can just be here and everything is fine, and I don't need to chase all these things. And so this experience, which was very strange, I was not doing anything for the first time in my life, and I felt for the first time like, this really, it's okay. Even now speaking about it, I feel the relief again.
Any more questions? Take this opportunity.
So, since you have asked us, why did we become monks, or why do we want to become monks? So now I am asking you, well, why are you not becoming monks? So please pass the microphone around. I want to hear everyone.
Craving. Too many craving.
At least honest.
Any brothers and sisters, take this opportunity. Brother Mark?
Yeah, actually we could really. So Richard, can you pass the microphone?
Thank you, Bhante. I don't know, I didn't have a question planned, but it struck me that I wanted to talk about solitude, because much of what you're talking about this evening is the desire for solitude so that we can engage with our practice and improve our practice. And I find as I get older, I was always quite quiet, quite introverted, but now that I come to see the light of the Dharma, I find that I have less need to communicate. I feel so much noise around, but so little is being said of any worth, of any value. And my own family are not Buddhists. My wife's not a Buddhist, she's a Christian, but we have a healthy engagement about the two religions. But the people I work with often are not Buddhists. And there's a sense, I feel that people feel that they want you to give more, they want you to expand, they want you to express yourself because it's all about self. But of course that's not what the answer is. But I find this brings you into conflict with your colleagues, even your family, even your loved ones, your spouse, because they don't see things the same way as you, and they want you to be, why don't you ever talk about your feelings? Why don't you say more? But I just wonder, I'm just extemporizing, I just wonder if you can offer any words of wisdom on the issue of being in samsara, but wanting to say less and to be less, and how to deal with it. Because, you've not always, I presume Bhante hasn't always been a monk, so you know what it's like to have to engage with your parents, with family.
You presume correctly.
Yes, logic, yeah. So thank you, if you could shed any light on this.
Oh, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
Maybe you can ask Bhante.
Sorry. I don't know where that came from, but if anyone has any views on this.
So I try to share a few thoughts or maybe something meaningful in your question. I can resonate with that very much. And I'm happy to live in a form of living where actually we have an ideal of quietness, of solitude. As monks, we have a lot of, it's not really regulations but recommendations about what things we're supposed to talk about, what things we're not supposed to talk about, and it's many things, even like politics or what's going on in the world. It doesn't really, so really we're supposed to be concerned with what leads to suffering and what leads away from it. And I think that's a very beautiful way of living, or a very beautiful way of communication. So I think we do have the right to give ourselves to freedom to not engage when we don't want to. And I'm not so sure whether the attitude that we have to speak, that we have to express ourselves, that we have to contribute, is really so actual. I mean, I noticed that in conversations, people who really are able to listen are extremely rare and extremely valued. And I just remember the story from a man who went to China. I think it was an American man who went to China, and suddenly he couldn't speak anymore. He couldn't speak much because he didn't understand the language. But what actually happened was that he was very popular. People liked him. And he was reflecting afterwards, why did it happen? Because he was not always speaking. So I think this might even be just a label or an understanding that we take up, that we always have to express ourselves. Of course, if people complain with you, there might be something to it. But just to put out that idea, wouldn't it be much more meaningful to live with people in a way that we feel authentic than to try to fit into a certain mold that we think people expect from us? I don't think that can also lead to authentic harmony if we try to pretend or to be other than we are. So to some extent, maybe we can also have the boldness to have other people accept us and accept our inclinations the way they are. Yeah, that's what I want to share about that. And sometimes it may also be surprising that if we start to communicate about the things that we find meaningful, other people catch up with that and maybe get an interest in what you find is meaningful and important. Because I mean, in this room and also around the world, and we were all people who came from all different stratas of life, different places, and we were not always into Dhamma. And somehow we found the Buddha's teaching, somehow we found an interest in going to something more meaningful, and everyone has this inside of him. Everyone has this seed or kind of interest inside of him or her. So maybe that can also be an encouragement to keep with your inclination, or and maybe even become an inspiration for others. And maybe also a shortened example. This is not about the amount of talking, but honesty. Also, many people say it's very difficult in the workplace and in our world to keep honest. We have one very respected monk, Ashin Tejaniya, who has been a lay practitioner for many, many years. And one thing that he did, he was always honest. He was a businessman. He was into business, and he was very respected for that. And it didn't turn out as many people expect. If you don't lie, you can't make any deals. If you don't lie, you've been taken advantage of. Just the opposite. And I think the same may apply for meaningful conversation and avoiding what you don't consider meaningful.
Maybe just another question for me, Bhante, if you don't mind that. Bhante, so when we try to do meditations, we always, is it right to expect something out of meditations? And whenever we go into practice, we always expect I expect I'll get happiness out of this meditation. Is that the right? Because sometimes when I cannot get peace in mind during my meditation, I'm just very pissed off and very frustrated, and that discourages me to doing more than. So how do you deal with? Is it the right mentality to always expect when you do meditation, we assume that we always get peace out of it? Then?
Bhante Ariyadhammika, you want to share anything?
No, you won't expect peace out of it all the time. You sit down and meditate, you're working through a lot of your conditioning and intentions, feelings, ideas, wants, worries. And all that comes up. We spend our whole lives jamming things in the closet, and then meditation, you open the door and it comes out onto you.
But it is a process of sorting through and coming to see exactly why we're suffering and what causes us suffering. Buddhist suffering is to be known, the cause is to be understood. That's what I got.
There's a lot of truth in that. And also the problem with expectation is also, now you already know your mind. Well, you should know by now then what to expect when you meditate. So rather than expecting peaceful states of bliss and happiness constantly, uninterruptedly, for hours on end, well, if that's not your reality in meditation, then maybe you should expect a lot of suffering and a lot of restlessness and a lot of things to come up. Not kidding. And this can be your default expectation of meditation, because this is what happens when you look at the mind. You, for the first time often, start to notice what is going on in the mind. It's not that you have more restlessness than before, but it's for the first time that you notice the restlessness, instability, and all your neuroses that you have never noticed before. So it was always here. So now when we understand, oh, that's the default mode of being, so that could be my expectation for meditation. And then when you sit down and meditate, yeah, that expectation will be fulfilled. Wonderful. But then there will also be times, every now and then, you meditate, you try to focus on the breath, or at least stay with it, just know whether you're breathing in or breathing out. And there comes a time where the mind eventually settles a little bit. It stays with the breath. And it's just happily watching. Oh, how wonderful. I didn't expect that. So, because you don't expect it, it's something positive. So, this is a principle that is true for everything in life. If you expect always the best case scenario, well, probably you will get a lot of disappointment in life, isn't it? Because you always think everything will work out well and perfectly. And people will always do what they want. And they will get what they want. So, that's the perfect recipe for disappointment. So, if you expect whatever comes out, I don't know. Or you know from past experience, well, usually the mind is not so peaceful all the time. So that can be our expectation. And sometimes you recognize, yeah, the expectation is fulfilled, and sometimes it's not. It's better than expected. And just with this little shift of attitude, it feels more pleasant, and you don't have so many disappointments, and it's also more realistic. You're not the only one who has a restless and wandering mind. If you were to make a survey here, which we are not, but if you were to make a survey here, how many of you have encountered restlessness, or how many of us is it the normal mode of being when you meditate? Well, that would be probably something like 80, 90, 99%. So this is nothing special. So that's what we should expect. And also, one thing that comes to mind on that very precious moment, when you notice, the mind has been wandering. So you notice, it's not being with the breath, it has been wandering. So this moment, rather than thinking, oh terrible, my mind was wandering again for 5 minutes. Actually, this moment, you're already back. This is already a mind moment of clarity. You're already present. You already know what's going on. So this is a moment to be happy about. Every time you recognize, I've been wandering, the mind has been wandering. Oh, fantastic. This is something to cherish. Oh, I'm noticing it now. And then again, gently bring it back to the breathing. So in this way, you generate a positive attitude, even towards what other people would call a failure. It's not a failure. It's part of the process. Like Thomas Edison said, when he was experimenting, so many experiments not working, he said, I have not failed. I have discovered 1,000 ways that won't work. You haven't failed in meditation either. You've discovered many ways that don't work so well. But then you learn. From each time you make a mistake, you learn a little bit. It's like a small child learning to walk. You know, just small babies, cute little baby, and walking 3 steps and falling to the ground, sometimes crying, hurting themselves. Now what are they doing? Is it just sitting there and saying, okay, I tried it, walking, not for me, thank you, I give up? No. Well, you get up again, and walk again, and crash again, walk again, fall again and again. But every time you fail, every time you learn a little bit, and subconsciously, your mind, your body will figure out things. And every time you make an inspiration to make it better next time, it becomes a little bit better. So in this way, we improve gradually. And all the failures, they are part of the path. And they're part of that final moment when the mindfulness and the samadhi, the practice goes well.
Thank you, Bhante.
Something in my practice, when I see myself suffering like that, frustrated, pissed off, angry, that is exactly what the Buddha saw. You see the problem, and I think it's a very important point that you see that. It's what we're trying to bring an end to. Instead of getting upset that you're upset, kind of delight that you see that you're upset. And then you can start to work with it and mold it and bring clarity.
Thank you very much, Bhante.
Any one last question? Anyone? Yes, just next to you.
Bhante. Yeah, Buddha says that we are managed to guide. We need to guide our senses, 5 senses.
Only
like
5?
if 5 or 6. No, they say 5 senses. Okay. In daily life, because it reminds me that they have a conversation with my friends. I say the people who manage to guide the 5 senses, they manage to see the way how they eat, to see the relationship between body and mind. And then my friend disagree with me. I say, then where is the mindfulness come? I say, if we didn't manage to guide the 5 senses, that means there's no moderations in eating, or maybe overeat. Even if we really train our body, we put in the best conditions, we can't ensure that the best result that we have. So just want to say that when we manage to guide our 5 senses, is it we manage to manifest the things in our daily life?
What do you mean by manifest the senses?
I mean like we manage to guide our 5 senses.
To guard or guide? Guard.
Guard.
Okay.
So because as we can notice that not of us, we are not aware that the way that we are eating, and then the effect that we eat to our bodies, that's why you can see nowadays more and more people got sick, or there's a lot of sickness. So just want Bhante to share that the way that how meditations help us to become more healthy in that way. Okay.
So yeah, awareness, mindfulness directed towards the body, towards one's habits of eating in this case, that can be an integral part of our practice. And that's something that not only you, but also the monks practice every day. Because it doesn't matter how old or how young, or how rich or how poor you are, you still have to put something into your mouth very regularly and process that. And that's also an occasion where often desires and attachments come up. Because, well, everybody enjoys good food, and something that triggers the taste buttons and feels pleasant. So then the question is, well, if you just give in to that urge and to this desire all the time, what is happening to the body? What will we eat? If we only eat things that feel pleasant and taste well and nice, well, interestingly, very often it's not the most healthy food that tastes the best, is it? And unfortunately, those things that would be healthy, nobody cares. It's not completely true. You can also make tasty, healthy food. Actually, But it is a problem that our desires and attachments towards particular types of food influence very strongly what we consume, and thereby also our health and our body. So how to deal with that? Can meditation help with that? Of course. How could it not? But how does it help? Well, firstly, by seeing and being aware of our mental state. Mindfulness, not just of the body, but also of the mind. Is the mind greedy or not? Is there aversion or not? Is there delusion or not? So when we recognize, oh, right now actually the mind is greedy, and you have mindfulness and clarity, and you notice that, well then it's within your hands to do something about it. But the first step has to be to recognize, oh, now the mind is greedy. Now the mind is indulging in something, or wants to indulge in something that it actually understands is not to its long-term benefit. But if we are not mindful, it's like being on autopilot. You know? Well, you're together with this food and you just shovel it in and just follow your instincts. So the first step that we need is mindfulness, to recognize what is going on in the mind. What is the situation happening right now? And once you've recognized that, well, the battle is still not won, because even if you're mindful, but if that thing tastes well, you might be mindful of it, but you still are going to eat it. So we might also need additional factors in addition to mindfulness. One of them, one of the methods that the Buddha often recommended, is also to be aware of the drawbacks, the disadvantages of sensual indulgence, for example. So what happens if I eat only French fries all the time? How will my body look, and how will my body feel if I eat unhealthy food? So you can use these kind of reflections, and then in this way counteract a little bit that desire. So by seeing the disadvantages coming from it. Or maybe if a person very much likes to go always to different restaurants, enjoy all types of food, sometimes can be quite expensive, and does not know how to handle that. Well, you can reflect on all the effort and money you have to procure and invest to get your sense desires fulfilled, and how much work, even if you don't cook the food on your own, but how much work you might have to do to earn enough money to be able to fulfill that desire on a regular basis. So you can look at your work, okay, well, I have to stand there for 8 hours a day, let myself be abused by my co-workers, by my boss, or maybe by the weather and rain, expose my body, and all that I have to endure so that I can go out eating at restaurants from time to time, or a lot of time. So is that really worth it? Well, maybe the answer is yes, I don't know. But very often the answer is maybe no. Because if really we understand that's not how we want to spend our time. I don't want to work for 6 hours a day just that I can get all the nicest food all the time. So this brings us back to this earlier reflection. If I could be happy with less, would I want that? Yeah, of course I want it. Yeah? So if I can be happy with less attachment to food, yes, that would be fantastic. So you can use all these reflections to counteract the tendency of the mind to indulge. Meditation is one important aspect, but it also needs to be integrated with the other vast factors. Right view, right thought, right effort. Mindfulness alone is not enough. There's another vast factor, which is called samadhi, composure or concentration. So that one has a very interesting relationship to sensual pleasures, in that the higher one's ability to calm the mind down and to make it happy through the power of samadhi, concentration. And you can make your mind very happy through meditation. Now for a person who has developed that skill to a high degree, who can make the mind happy basically on command, for such a person, the sense pleasures, food, drinks, body sensation, whatever they are, they don't have much of a pull anymore. They don't have much of an attraction because you have something better. You can make the mind so happy, even ecstatic, even if it's not ecstatic, just happy and cheerful, much more than you would be able to do it through eating even your favorite dish. So once a person has cultivated the mind, especially the samadhi, to that degree, the sensual pleasures lose their pull and lose their attraction. So this is also a way to overcome attraction to sense pleasures, desires, attachments. So again, so many path factors of the Noble Eightfold Path support that. So we never should focus just on one factor alone. So it's the whole set. That's what the Buddha was teaching, all 8 path factors. Not just 7, not just 6, but all 8. Does that answer a little bit your question? Okay, so in this case, I would like to close the evening. And thank you very much for your attention. And I wish you a nice evening. And hope we see each other again at some later occasion. Hopefully, if we all make it through the jungle in these 2 weeks and nothing happens, nobody is eaten by a bear or tiger, then we might meet another time at another occasion.
Okay, Bhante.
Don't forget when you get home, every day 1 item. For 2 months. Let me know next time, I will ask you.